Well, hello, world, and welcome to another episode of the Crisis Victory Show. My name is Dr. Hal Bradly. I'm one of the founders and executive producers, along with Pete Turner, who is also the creator of the Break It Down show. We work together to create the Crisis Victory Show for the purpose of bringing forth stories of people such as ourselves who have survived extreme crisis events, and we come out on the other end in a humanitarian scale that is literally unprecedented. And Pete and I both felt that the world needed to hear these stories to actively give motivation to people that have gone through something of an extreme nature in their life and yet be able to have the ability to turn that nature around and to benefit other people. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest, Jason, today. Jason's a former police officer. And by the way, Jason, thank you for your service in the law enforcement community. And Jason is he's a well-known motivational speaker. He's out there on the grid everywhere, and I'm just so excited and honored to have you on my show today. So, Jason, thank you very much, and welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, sir. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, your story is absolutely amazing, and just for the audience to understand, the creation of the Crisis Victory Show was designed specifically to let others know, like Jason and myself and Pete, who have gone through something critical and extreme in its nature, whether it be self-inflicted or in Jason's case, an accident that was an occurrence while he was on duty. So the conversation that we're going to be holding today hopefully will inspire other people such as ourselves, Jason, that have gone through these tragic events, and now, such as ourselves, are out there and on such a scale of serving and helping and bringing other people through their traumatic times and letting them be exposed and experienced to the goodness that can follow as a result. So starting this off today, I'd like to take it back, if you wouldn't mind, to the night of the incident of your action, of what happened to you. Were you on duty at the time, Jason? I never got to ask that.
Yes, sir, I was on duty.
Okay. Can you describe exactly what led to the events of the car becoming in fire and how you were rescued from that, please?
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story. I don't even think Holly would accept it if we wouldn't told them. They'd say that didn't happen. But I was only 14 months in to my career, still pretty new. And any law enforcement officer out there will understand that that's about 5 minutes. It takes a few years to get comfortable with what you're doing. So I was fresh off probation, doing my thing. And it was a Monday. Went through about 8.5 hours of my 10-hour shift, and I answered up for an emergency call that I actually was not. I didn't need to answer up for it. It was not in my patrol zone. I could have ignored it, but I chose to take it. And while I was on my way to the call, it was an emergency call, so I was running code 3, lights and siren, and I approached an intersection, a very busy part of Phoenix. I mean, I live in the 5th largest city in the country, so downtown is where I worked. It's pretty busy. And I had a red light, so I came to just a brief stop to make sure that I would clear the intersection safely. Takes maybe a second and a half. And just as I was going to proceed, my patrol car was hit from behind by a taxi cab. The driver was suffering an epileptic seizure. He was doing 115 miles an hour when he ran into me. I can't even fathom on a 40-mile-an-hour downtown city street. Car burst into flames, traveled about 270 feet through the intersection, and then started the many, many miracles that led to my recovery and where I'm at today. I came to rest about 50 feet from a fire truck that happened to be right there in the intersection. And,
Jesus.
I give so much credit to them because it's very rare that the world actually blows up right in front of us. No notice, no warning, no details, no dispatcher telling you where you're going. Just, I give this crew a lot of credit. And they went to work for me, had me out of the car in 90 seconds. I was.
Wow.
Yeah, I was
that's
2.5.
fast.
Oh, it's crazy fast. Nobody gets the time.
Yeah.
I got, I'm going to argue, of course, I'm biased, but I think a lot of people will agree. The best burn center in the entire United States is right here in Maricopa County. And I was 2.5 miles away from them. And from impact to emergency room was 8 minutes.
Jesus.
I suffered burns to 43% of my body. My neck, head, and face were the worst. They were 4th degree. My shoulders, my hands were 3rd degree. My chest, my stomach, my back were spared from the burns, which when your torso gets burned, it's really hard to survive.
Yes.
That because burns are so constricting and they will keep on burning. And pretty soon your lungs just simply can't expand. And also being knocked unconscious, not being in the fear and the chaos and sucking in all those toxic fumes. My breathing was shallow. And so I didn't, with how fast they got me out, I didn't suffer any inhalation burns. And
that was going to be one of my questions right there. I'm really glad you clarified. Thank you.
Outside of the burns, I had 2 cracked ribs and a mild concussion. I mean, that car doesn't catch on fire. I'd have gone home a few hours after the accident, and that started the long process. I mean, obviously, I was the doctors, who some of the best in the world. In fact, one of them is still my primary care physician. I go to. Wonderful. I don't care if I have a cold. I still go to the burn center. I make those guys laugh. They're like, "What Wonderful. Are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I got the sniffles." So, but they told my wife and parents and friends, everybody, they were pretty blunt. They're like, "Look, Jason, I've never seen this to somebody's head and face. Jason's not going to survive." And they went to work, put me in a medically induced coma, and I did survive. Spent 2.5 months in a coma, which,
wow,
a coma that is medically induced. Those drugs are like memory blockers. Yeah. So when I woke up, or when they decided to wake me up, I was as clear-headed as I am right now. It's crazy. And, I knew I was in the hospital. Why can't I open my eyes? Why can't I move? I just had 1,000 thoughts pouring into my mind. And my wife was in the room with me. And then she started to, I got to say, though, I'll never forget how calm and strong her voice was, which I, appreciate. But she told me pretty quickly, "You're in a car accident." And I was more concerned with, holy cow, I'm a cop. I was just at work. Was it my fault? And she said no. So I did feel a little better. And then showed me my car caught on fire. And that's when it was just the floor gave way right into the depths of a nightmare that I could have never, ever planned for.
Jason, I've got to tell you, I don't know if you know anything about me or not. Pete put us together for this interview today. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis so you have an understanding of why I can relate to what you just described. Okay. I used to work for the Sinaloa drug cartel, spent 15 years of my life actively involved as a smuggler, later a distributor in the Pacific Northwest, and became the primary target of the Department of Justice when they formed the organization to go dubbed Operation Northern Exposure to take out the largest cocaine trafficker in the history of the Northwest. And that was me. I was their primary target. At one point, I had gone down to Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, and met with some of the bosses and was trying to negotiate my final release from my commitment to the cartel. But as you know, it's plata or plomo, it's blood or it's silver or lead. That's how you get out of that world. Yeah. Well, because I was a child down there in '69 and grew up in a village and knew some of those when they were really young. I think Pete's even got a picture of me with El Chapo 41 years ago when we were just pot smugglers.
No kidding.
Oh yeah. So, and wow. I knew all of those guys. Rafael Cara Quintero, the one that did Kiki Camarena. That's me on the right.
Yeah, Kiki. Oh yeah, I know him.
It broke my heart what they did to him. I knew that was going to be the foundation fall of all of it. And what a man to be honored so reverently. And I always think of Kiki. I always think of him. I was actually down there in country at the time of his capture. But getting back to this story, what I'd like to do is explain to you that during my years of working before I was recruited by the DOJ and spent 17 years as an undercover operative in foreign countries down there fighting that war. I was exposed to and experienced many, many horrible things. I've seen people doused with gasoline and burned alive right in front of me. I've seen acid bath torture. I've seen bodily mutilation. I've seen people walked up and shot right in the head, and on and on and on. So the question I was going to ask you was about your lungs and your breathing, because I remember watching somebody burning alive, and what ended his life was the inhalation of the fire.
It is.
I mean, it was just amazing to see that. And
that toxicity is something you cannot survive.
Yeah, I'm really surprised, because like you had said here, in the 43% of your burning, a lot of it was the head area, that region. And that's just exactly the access point for the lung exposure and the lung damage. And, you know, I swear it's an act of God that got you through that, more so than anything else. And I'm also a certified pastor and certified hospice chaplain for 25 years. I walked away. Yeah, thank you, brother. I walked away from my criminal life 30 years ago. And I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office in Seattle, Washington, at the and said, "Here I am. I'm Hal Bradly." And they went, "Oh my God, Hal Bradly just walked in. Here's this drug kingpin that, you know, we're all going after, and he just walks in." And it really kind of pissed some of the guys off, Jason, because you're a law enforcement officer. You know what it means to tag a target like that, and to have that son of a gun rob you of that trophy. But as the years went on, I picked up my SRE number and SA number with DEA and Customs. And we spent 19 months together, operational outside of the United States, infiltrating and inserting myself back into segments of the cartel and taking them out. I went to prison, and while I was in Leavenworth, I got approached by two representatives of the State Department. They met with me in the warden's office there at Leavenworth and said, "How would you like to become a contractor for the Department of Justice?" And the reason being is I wasn't some rat that got caught and started telling on his friends. I was a guy that, on my own, knowing I was facing life and execution from the cartel, walked in and said, "They're not going to let me go. Let's take this thing down, and I'm here to help." And we made careers. I mean, my God, some of the law enforcement people, Jason, two of them became SACs by the end of their careers, and I love them with all of my heart. Been through a lot of life and death, near-death experiences. I myself, Jason, was assassinated, so I know what you mean about medically induced coma and how you come out of that when they were repairing me. I got hit here 5 years ago.
No kidding.
After all those years, I got covered by the Beltran Leyva organization used to be the Gulf Coast Syndicate, and they have since dissolved, of course. But even decades later, they came across me and found me, so they put a kill order on me, and
they don't forget.
No, the last knife strike into my skull was the one that I was leaving the world. I was dying in that moment, and I knew my death was imminent within seconds. And I just such a great peace fell over me. And I don't attribute that to the 13 years in seminary and university to get my doctorate in pastoral counseling. I don't attribute it to none of that. What I attribute it to is there was purpose of my existence to carry on. But I felt the love, Jason, of God himself touching me in that moment. And you know what I'm talking about, brother.
I do. And peace and
and
accountability and that kind of stuff. Like, people can say, "Well, I'm a God-fearing man, and I go to church with my wife every Sunday, and I'm very spiritual." But at the end of the day, I recognize the biggest blessing I have is I get to choose how I want to feel, how I want to react, how I want to respond. And when you talk about those emotions, that is a choice. And once you get a hold of those, because they're so rare, right?
They're priceless.
Are you going to feel peace and serenity? I feel like I'm on a lifelong search. And the times that I get them, it's like, oh, I'm going to hold on tight because I know I only got them for maybe a couple hours, maybe a couple days, but it's worth the continued journey. And I just love everything that you're saying about, from it's never too late to do the right thing, first of all.
Absolutely.
And make, the life that you want to make it. And it doesn't have to be the one you wanted 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It can be that. It's the same thing for, I don't get into comparing. I love sitting here going, I have no idea what you went through, man. That just boggles my mind. But you know what? Your adversity is yours. Mine's mine. We have our stories. and there's no reason we should keep them to ourselves.
No, Jason, I think that would be a sin to God himself to keep it from the people, because there are a lot of people out here, Jason, that have gone through similar extreme events such as you and I have survived in our life. And it's just a wonderful moment and opportunity that we can turn to them and say, look, this is that moment in your life when you hit a certain type of a spiritual crossroad, if you will.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you in the moment of when you were losing consciousness and what you went through, but I can describe to you that all of these things that are normal to us in life, the importance of them left me immediately. And as I was fading into death, I was just so full of joy. I didn't care. I had released from this world. Did you feel that in your moment?
I didn't feel that in the moment, only because the impact was so sudden, so strong.
Yes.
I didn't see it coming. So it truly, for me, I was at work, and then 2.5 months later, I'm waking up and being told things that I'm just like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, I could not.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It was just for me, it was the blink of an eye. And believe me, I'm grateful that I didn't have to go through the fear or the chaos or the knowing. And my peace, my joy, my accountability, my purpose and meaning in life came a short time later, and still something that has gotten me through, 20, coming up on 24 years. But I
Wonderful. I love it.
Have that in the moment. But listen, I'm glad. Again, I'm grateful. I would not have wanted to see that coming. I would not have wanted to feel what I could have felt, because I don't think I would have survived it.
Yeah, it is a different scenario. When I was facing my moment of a near-death exposure, that I got hit by a cartel killer that was sent up here to execute a kill order. When I dropped to my knee at the back of my car to look at the alleged damage that, quote, this tow truck driver had asked me to come down and look at, as soon as I hit my knee on the ground, I was aware. I knew I was getting hit in that instant. So unlike you, there was no expectation of that traumatic moment, that instant, But let me tell you, what goes through the mind when you know that this is it. And man, I mean, I'm a PTSD patient with the Veterans Administration, have been for 51 years. I was captured and tortured in the service of my country. I've gone through a lot of stuff, but nothing can prepare you for that moment of coming out of a medically induced coma, like I did, like you did. They did it for me for a couple of days to do the surgeries.
Right.
And I didn't remember a damn thing at first about it's like I didn't miss nothing. It was a page turn. All I did was set up, and I went, Jesus Christ, I've got nobody here I'm not under protection, because I remember telling the forensic, I told the forensic nurse, this is a kill order. It's a failed kill order. They're going to hit me. I need protection here in the hospital. And then I blacked out, and I didn't remember nothing until I came through a couple of days later. But it's a really interesting feeling to come out of a chemically induced coma and to have a revelation of, okay, what happened? What's going on? There's so many questions that flooded me. Jason, did you go through that same experience?
I did go through it, and I went through it for several weeks, and I went through all the things that I think not only is it normal, but now with hindsight being so crystal clear, it's absolutely required. None of us are going to go through a traumatic event that's going to change our lives and just say, okay, and move on. None of us are designed with that capability. It's just not possible. If you have any hope of coming out the other side, you got to go on a journey within yourself. So, I mean, I went through the shock and the anger and the tears. I was cussing at people who were there to love and support me in the hospital. I was, going through oh my gosh, I've lost the job that I love, but what are my 2 young children going to think of me with these burn scar? I mean, I went through all of that every day, every minute for several weeks, until I got to the night where all of a sudden the calmness overcame me. And again, I had 2 things happen, mentally, emotionally, and they still to this day carry me through all my days. You there? Or we frozen?
Yeah, we're there now. Are you there?
Yeah, I got you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we should probably repeat that segment that you just were sharing because I think that we got blacked out.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it came through. So just after
okay.
that, so just leave a gap here and then respond or continue, Jason.
All right, cool.
Yeah, this is so fascinating to me right now, Jason, because when we come out of a critical experience like both you and I have done, to describe to the audience and people that have also had similar experiences, I wonder how relative in comparison their stories are to our stories as we share this information today. And how do we get them on track, Jason, to have an acceptance of the tragic event and to be able to pull it out, take a look at it, talk to it, and put it back inside and make peace with it? Because you and I both know that it never, ever goes away.
No, it's never going to go away.
Yes.
But, and I have this thing tattooed on my arm. You know, I love quotes, love cliches. They're short, they're powerful. There's one in particular I'll tell you about that I think about literally every day, 5 times a day, because we have, you know, you can talk about adversity being big or small. It's just adversity. It's ours. Embrace it. You got to get over it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a flat tire going to, you know, a meeting or whether it's something of this magnitude. But, you know, I'm pretty blunt now when I get my talks in trying to explain to people nothing in this world is going to hold you back more than seeing yourself as a victim or blaming somebody else.
Absolutely.
Now, I've got a 1,000-page police report, and on every single page it says victim Jason Schechterle. Yeah. But outside of that initial impact, outside of that initial trauma, I'm only a victim if I choose to be. And that old saying of drink poison and expect the other person to die.
Yeah.
It's never once worked in history. So
you're
only hurting yourself. And while I have respect for people who really struggle, especially I'm very blessed. I will tell you right now, I have no PTSD. And
wow, that's amazing.
But what I do have that I've had to deal with, I've had to go through a lot of years of anger and guilt of whether it be the attention I receive or seeing what other officers, military people, I was in the Air Force for 4 years, other military people go through. And I'm sitting here going, you know, who the hell are you? You were in a car accident. What kind of bullshit is that? You know what I mean? It was almost in the humility that I found the most pain. And I had to finally come to grips with, you know what? Because people were like, oh, he was in the line of duty. You know what? I was in a car accident.
Yeah,
you see what
I get
those
it.
guys are doing?
I get it.
I mean, I wasn't blown up in Afghanistan. I didn't have a gun pointed at me or a knife stuck in my head. So I dealt with that side of it. But no, I've never had the PTSD. And once I accepted that I wasn't going to blame the guy who hit me, and he went to jail for a long time, I wasn't going to see myself as a victim. Then my strongest foundation and what I would encourage people strongly, and it's really hard. I got very lucky. I didn't have to work at this. I didn't have to go to therapy. I didn't have to read books. This just overcame me. Yeah. So I'll explain it this way. I was laying in the hospital. I was completely blind. I couldn't move. I hadn't even realized yet I lost half my fingers to amputation. I had dropped down to I'm 6'3". I dropped down to about 120 pounds. They're still expecting me to die at any minute.
Yes.
And I was overcome with the most incredible sense of peace in accountability. And again, this goes back to, this is my biggest blessing that God gave me. I can do whatever I want every day. I can choose how to live my life. I can choose which road I'm going down, which road I'm not going down. The accountability part, and I started kind of slow. I'm like, you know what? You chose to be a police officer. Nobody forced me to take that job. It was a calling, and I took it. I I had no business answering up for that call, but I chose to.
Yes.
I chose the route that I was driving. Then I went back a lot of years. I chose to give up a golf scholarship in college to join the Air Force. I chose to only do the required 4 years, get my structure and discipline, come back, become a police officer. And I actually postponed becoming a police officer for 4 years because I had a young family at the time, young kids, and I needed to get, a quick, good job, and I did. And then all of a sudden, another officer was killed in Phoenix, ironically, 2 years to the day before my accident.
Jesus.
So what I tell people, and I truly believe this every day, all of those decisions that I made over more than a decade,
yes,
that's what got me into that fire and into that hospital. It was not a random, tragic moment in time. And I know people believe it is. I'm not unlucky. I wasn't in the wrong place. No, I was exactly where I had chosen to be. And let me tell you, when you can accept, accountability is not a bad thing. It's not self-blame. It's about self-awareness, which is
self-truth.
It's one of the most key ingredients in resilience is self-awareness and, yes, your truth. And when I had that, let me tell you, it was the trajectory has been nothing but straight up, and it hasn't stopped.
Well, you know what, brother? I'm so glad you're talking about accountability because a lot of people will shy away from it.
Yes.
For one reason or another. Like I deal with rape victims. I deal with overdose cases daily. This is my life. I'm in my 20th year working in trap houses and homeless camps. This is my payback. This is my accountability. And when I walked in 30 years ago to take down the faction up here in the Northwest, it was accountability that created the crossroads that trajected me into that direction. So that is an extremely powerful word. And you're right. You have to have a self-truth that comes to you at some point of accepting what the hell the situation you're in. And you're right, man. The fact of accountability saying victim hell, I'm the one that chose to be a police officer. I'm the one that served my country in the Air Force. I'm the one that made these choices. So how the hell can I hold to accountability another person from the choices I myself created? And I love you for that, brother, because that's exactly why you're on this show today. We need to tell people that when they hit that crossroads event, that moment in life, when change, whether we expected it or not, comes upon us, that there is such a positive direction that can be created as a result of the wisdom of the survivorship of it. And I really admire you for that. It's so easy to say the taxi driver did this or whatever, but you didn't even go down that path at all. No. Yeah, I see that. And I got to ask you a question. Did you by chance did the driver ever come and see you? Did he ever say, I'm sorry? Did he ever?
No, this guy.
Okay.
Again, while I was in the hospital is when I had the realization, I'm not going to blame him. I'm not going to be mad. However, a year later, there was a trial. And I mean, I'm a human being like everybody else. And I have my people that I like, and I have my people that I don't think much of. And character is a big thing with me. So we go through the trial. It's about 3 weeks. He was found guilty. He had a passenger in his car also.
Oh, Jesus.
That survived, was hurt pretty bad. So he's got 2 counts of ag assault against him. He got found guilty. And you know this better than most people. At a felony trial, whoever wants to talk to the judge can talk to him.
Yes. I do know.
You're going to love this. This dude getting found guilty by a jury of his peers. We're done at the sentencing. I read a statement. My parents read a statement. My best friend, his family. He got up there. His only injury was a severely broken left leg. His car did not catch on fire.
At over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, you believe that?
Jesus, God.
Well, it's kind of like being drunk. I think you're in that epileptic seizure and your body's just so relaxed. You can take a lot of hits. But he got in front of the judge, and he told the judge that the reason his leg was broken so bad that night was a bunch of my police friends went to the hospital and beat him up. And just to hear that was almost so comical.
Brother, that's that lack of accountability. That's the lack of accountability. I'm so glad you exposed that.
What a tiny, tiny character of a person.
No
I'm
kidding.
like, you know what? You're going to suffer more than I ever will just because that's how you live your life. And so, no, I never gave him another thought. And he is out of prison now. I have no idea. He had 3 kids of his own that he greatly affected their life by, going to prison for 10 years. And, all I can hope is he got out in 2011. I hope he's out living a productive life. I really do.
Brother, I love you for it. And I'll tell you why. When I came out of the coma at the hospital and I thought about the contract killer that was sent to take my life, the first thing I did was forgive him. And I mean, I really felt that. And the second thing that I thought about was, hell, I was nothing but a name and an address on a piece of paper.
He was just doing a job.
Yep. And he was doing, I spent 15 years in the cartels. I'm well aware of jobs. So right. My point is, there was no anger, there was no animosity, and I accepted my situation because I had created my situation.
Yes.
So the accountability was solidified within me, like you. And that's the cure-all to survivorship right there. When you can sit there and I know, brother, I feel it too.
That's all people have to understand. That is the cure-all. I don't care what medication they give you. I don't care what anybody tells you. The cure-all is right there.
Yes, it is.
Accept the facts and take accountability for being who, where, and more importantly, why you are. Like why I am is the greatest feeling in the world. I know exactly who I am.
Brother, I got to ask you, how did you first start going out as a motivational speaker? What guided you to that calling, if you will? I'm just fascinated by what you do.
So I found a few causes. So one of the cliches I was going to tell you about. You ever see the movie Tombstone?
Oh, of course.
Okay, everybody has.
Yeah.
Most quotable movie ever.
I'll be your Huckleberry.
I would argue that Val Kilmer's role as Doc Holliday might be the greatest thing ever put on film.
Boy, but I'm with you.
for those who have seen it, if you remember at the beginning of the movie when Kurt Russell's character Wyatt Earp and his brothers arrived in Tombstone, he went into that saloon to set up business, and he ran across Billy Bob Thornton's character. He's being an ass. And Kurt Russell proceeded to whoop his ass. And then he stood there very calmly, looked him in the eye, and he said, "Are you going to do something or just stand there and bleed?"
And bleed. Yeah, I remember the line.
And let me tell you, I think about that every day because bleeding, a lot of times it's going to be metaphorically. I might bleed spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically, but everything I go through, I think about that. And then, so I found some causes like the cars. I'm the very humble to say I'm the one who got a fire truck in the intersection. 33 officers across this country died in those rear and fuel fed fires. Countless civilians.
Jesus.
That you're never going to hear about. Well, you know what? I went to work on that with a lot of strong people. And in 2011, we got those cars. They're not even made anymore. Those fires are over.
Wow. So, congratulations.
So
what an excellent thing to do.
I was able to return to work. 18 months later, I ended up being a homicide detective, which you've seen it. You've dealt in that world.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing quite like speaking for victims who can't speak for themselves, working with those families. I loved it. I retired. I went into business myself. And at the time, I was like, it just felt so good to just be Jason again. Not be on the news. Not, you know what? I was a dad. I was a husband, a dad, had my own business. I was doing pretty good. Didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was doing pretty good. And so the truth is, I've been one of those lucky people that have 2 aha moments. Yes. I was because my story was on the news a lot, I would get asked to come to a church, go to a school. I had no idea how to tell my story. It hadn't really evolved that far. So one day I get invited to a conference, and it was like 700 people. I mean, I was totally like, wow, look at this. So I do my thing, and it was about, back then it was 45 minutes. Now I speak anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. Yes. But afterwards, some people will always come up. So out of 700, let's say 30 people wanted to come up and shake my hand, take a picture. Yes. And this guy walks up, and now I want you to remember September. So I had one of my biggest surgeries on September 10th of 2001.
Oh my God. The day before the towers.
The day before the towers. And then when the towers went down, I was blind laying in bed. But when they went down, all I could think about was all those firefighters that were going up.
Yes, of course.
So this guy walks up to me, and I'm telling you, this interaction was 7 seconds. He shook my hand. He said two simple things. He said, I'm a New York firefighter. I was at 9/11. I lost a lot of my friends. And I am currently, this is 2010, I'm currently going through a divorce, and you changed my life today.
Beautiful.
And I walked out of the building. I mean, literally walked out, hadn't even made it to my truck yet. Got on my phone, called my business broker, and I said, sell my company as fast as you can. I know what I'm supposed to do in life. And I've been doing it ever since.
You know, Jason, I've when I was studying you before I got on the show, I got an opportunity to see some of your speaking engagements. And, you know, I love it how you said, and this is so true, when you first start out speaking to crowds, 45 minutes is eternity.
Oh,
A few years into it, brother, it's 2 to 3 hours is nothing.
it's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah, I'm a senior.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm a senior pastor. I have been since I completed my ordination studies while in federal prison at Springfield Medical Center in the mid to late 90s. And yeah, I was formally ordained while I was in the prison. And Johnny Gambino actually threw a yard feast for me because everybody knew that this wasn't some kind of game with me. They knew that I'd really call it. I was also, Jason, trained as a hospice counselor to fellow dying prisoners. And I took 24 inmates through the dying process during my time. And I used to do my seminarial homework at night, sitting up in those death rooms, watching a man die as I'm cramming and studying and getting this word infused into me. And my calling became very, very clear. Instead of creating the victims that I had created for 15 years, when I got released from prison, I was reordained formally by a bishop in Seattle and immediately entered into the outreach services department and started working in the homeless camps and the trap houses.
Well, I'll tell you what, that impacts me a lot. And because the business that I was in,
yes,
I was doing non-emergency medical transport for hospice.
Wow. I didn't know that was in your story.
And then in 2017, I sat in a hospice facility and held my dad's hand while he passed. And people like you, the impact that you have on families in those moments. So, you know, I want to say our paths crossed a little bit in those
I feel it, brother.
I have a lot of respect for you because it's not an easy job. But that's the one business that's never going to go away, right? I mean,
no, I've taken easily.
We're all heading there.
Brother, I've taken over 60 people through the dying process in the 24 years
I've been on. It's a hell of a thing to watch.
Yeah, you know, I last week, about 5 days ago, I took a lady friend of mine of 30 years, dear friend, and her husband was sitting there when I got the call. I showed up about 5:30 in the morning and had her on life support. And this is just 5 days ago. And here I am holding the hand of a lady that I have loved and cherished our friendship. And I kiss her on the forehead. And there's no grieving at that point because you have to get yourself and prepare yourself for the husband of 40 years holding his wife's hand and having to tell them to go ahead and turn the machine off. That is the grieving process that we need as caregivers to focus on. You have been on the front line with that, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's a very, very, it's an honor or privilege to be with someone in that last moment of life.
Exactly. It's an honor and privilege. And there's a complete stark contrast between, I mean, I haven't seen the violence you have, but I have watched people die violently. I have looked at people and been like, bro, sorry, nothing I can do for you. But it was like a shithead gangbanger, right? And I didn't have the emotions. When you have the opportunity to actually go through the transition process, whether you're helping families or like me, when I was holding my dad's hand, I remember my sister looking at me. She goes, Jason, you're crying and chuckling at the same time. And I'm like, the emotions are so overwhelming that they're coming out in, I'm not laughing because my dad's dying. I'm chuckling because I had this guy for 44 years and I'm so honored to be doing what I'm doing right now. And I hope to God my kids get to do it someday.
That's beautifully said. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jason. Because I know I did last rites over my mother in her moment of death, and I was in the church pulpit. I was a senior pastor for 3 years with my own congregation at this time, and jumping off on missions for the DEA and Customs and ATF and CIA at the same exact time that I was pastoring a church.
Wow.
And the phone would ring, and it'd be pack a bag, you're on your way to Bogota in the morning type
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm preparing a sermon, and get this. Just before I was getting up in the pulpit to preach to my congregation, which was only about 65 or 70, not a big one, the phone rings, and I go in the back room, and it's my sister, and she said, Mom's passing right now. Can you give her her last rites? And she put the phone to my mother's ear, and I started giving her her rites, and my sister got back on and said, Mom just left. And I hung up that phone, reflected for about 10 seconds, walked up in the pulpit, and brother, I preached probably the best sermon I ever preached in my life that day.
Yes, sir.
So I understand
Yes,
that
sir.
feeling of holding
Yes,
your
sir.
dad's hand in that moment. And what an honor, what a reverence, what
It is.
it's indescribable. It's indescribable.
Ever grateful that I got to do it. Not a lot of people get to do that.
No. That was a privilege, and I'm glad you shared that today. And makes me closer to you, Jason. Right now, I'm actually feeling emotion for you because I know what that was.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Hey, listen, I'd like to get a little bit now, if we could, into some of your traveling experiences, the motivational speaking that you do, and if you can explain to the audience the impact that you see now coming from the years of growing in the motivational institution, if you will. Let them know, because we're going to try and create others from this interview today that will have that courage and that fortitude to step out and do exactly what we do to the world community today. Can you please talk about that?
Yeah, and I want to start with this because I had to go. You probably hear from other people, you could get 100 compliments, or you could get 99 compliments, but the one you're going to think about is the one that wasn't good.
Absolutely.
So, my most recent speech, I got the great fortune of going to Lake Placid, New York. The Miracle on Ice, saw the rink. Beautiful part of the United States. I come from the desert. Anyway, I do a speech to the New York State Highway Traffic Symposium. Went incredible and got all the feedback. And one guy wrote, keynote speakers are the biggest waste of taxpayer money. We know tragedies occur. We don't need to hear about them. And again, my first thought was, man, how sad is your life, bro? Like, hear that goes off. But what I have found over the years, first of all, I'm not going to lie. So I'll start with this. Selfishly, it feels amazing. And I'm sure you're the same way. You walk off that pulpit, you're like, damn, I feel good. And there's nothing wrong with being a little bit selfish. It's okay.
Yeah, that's not pride or ego. That's something totally disconnected from that.
I feel good. I'm inspired.
Yeah.
And then there is the old adage of, if you can get through to one person. But what I have found over the years, now that I've spoken to tens of thousands of people, and I've heard stories from people saying, I just got diagnosed with cancer and I'm too scared to even tell my family yet. And this helped me, all the way to, I lost somebody a year ago and I haven't gotten over it. Or I was raped. I was assaulted as a child. Like, I have heard it all. We all have our stuff. That's you're not going to get away from that. But I just love to connect with people. And I will always, I do a lot of law enforcement training. And of course, that's going to have a little different texture to it. I do a lot of organ and tissue talks because my life was saved because of tissue donation.
Yes.
But I would say about 90% of the people I talk to, I let them know right up front, look, my former career and my burn injuries are the two least important parts of what we're talking about today. And, this is my life. This is my story. You don't get to live it. You have to live yours. So let's think about let's gather up your adversity, your challenges, your obstacles, but also you better bring in your love and your hopes and your goals.
Yes.
For the future, and just quietly sit them there in front of you. And I just love to, because when I first get on stage, I have a pretty intense intro video that actually has the real audio from the police and fire. It has real media footage. it's pretty intense. So when I get on stage, people are radio silent.
Yeah, they're fired up already.
And then, well, they're pretty quiet though. And then they're looking.
Well, that's fired up.
Going,
it impacts them.
What's this guy going to say? And then over the course of an hour or two, when you start, and I'm really big on the one thing that I will promise you, in 1 hour, you will cry and you will laugh, and I will not fail you on that, and I like to laugh a lot more than I cry, but this is going to be a journey, and it's going to be hard. I mean, I've had people get up and walk out. I've had people have seizures looking at some of my pictures. Like, it's pretty intense, but I love to, by the end, to bring things full circle, and when people can see how healthy and happy I am now in my 50s, when they see what my kids have grown into. We had a third kid after the accident.
How beautiful. Beautiful.
They're such good kids. They're going to be such good members of society. I have 2 grandkids now. Wouldn't want to miss that for the world, right? And so I just like to get through everything, give my little tidbits on what helped me. You know, I'm not self-righteous enough to be like, do this. You know, I love Tony Robbins, but I can't pound on a podium and yell and scream and be like, do this. I just can't do that. I just have a conversation with people. But there's nothing like getting up in front of 250, 500 people, and sharing your story and letting them choose to absorb whatever parts of their life it could impact. And then it's up to them what they do with it after they leave.
Well, you know what, Jason, what did Jesus Christ tell us? He said to be doers of the word, not hearers only, and to go forth and be the example. And one of the things that I was looking at when I was researching you and studying you on stand, I noticed that you have a positive and mental attitude, and you're motivated. Your neurolinguistics, the way that you move, your motions, everything put together. And I'm also a Washington State licensed former private investigator. I had my own agency. Rewarded that by the DOJ, a man with 2 felony convictions, twice in prison, and bang, I got a badge and a shield as a result of my service. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I knew you'd love that. The point that I'm making, though, was your attitude and motivation is what set them on fire when they were silent, not when they were showing it in their exposure. Your intro program that you created impacted them to a point of where they started to focus immediately before you even started the speaking. Am I correct?
100% correct. Yeah. And, you know, I like to believe, you know, I was 28 years old when this happened, and I was a lucky guy as far as when I got hurt. Both my parents were healthy and married. All 4 of my grandparents were still alive.
Oh, wonderful.
I had never watched anybody go through a divorce. I broke a few bones growing up playing high school, or playing sports, but big deal. I was so unprepared. And if you would have said on the morning of March 26th of 2001, hey, here's what's coming, I'd have taken my gun out and just eaten it for lunch. I'd be like, hell no, I can't do that. So
that thought, I get it.
If it's true that adversity reveals character, then that's going to be what I'm most proud of, because I don't know how. Well, I do know how I got to where I'm at today, but I would not have known it back then. But I also want to say real quick, listen, for everything you're hearing, everything you're seeing, I am 2% of my success. My family, my friends, my support system has, you know, I could not have done this alone, and I did not do it alone. I am the smallest portion of this, and I mean that. I'm not trying to sound so humble and stupid. I truly mean that. Without,
I know exactly what you're saying.
I'd have never gotten here, ever.
Yeah, it comes to a point where it really isn't about us. It's about everything that factored into creating us. You know, I have friends of mine that are lifelong friends that are federal agents that in the beginning of their careers, when I walked in, they were greenhorn agents. And I got to watch them become SACs of their offices 30 years later.
How good is that?
There's nothing greater. There's nothing.
I'm sure you're filled with so much pride.
for them. I love them,
Yeah,
and they
no,
help.
for them. Yeah, for
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Like I saw you as a baby. Look at you now.
yeah, exactly. And I remember, when you were talking about so many years ago when you were 28, that photograph of me with Chapo Guzman, that's me at 28.
Is it
So I
really?
get it. Yeah, I was 28 at the time.
All
And,
right.
reflecting back on how different our journeys are, but how closely bonded we are in this moment as a
Oh, yeah.
result of what we have gone through and where we took it. We didn't do it for an egotistical purpose or prideful purpose. We did it because we recognized we were called to do it. And I
Exactly.
absolutely
Exactly.
love you for what you do, Jason. I know the
Thank you,
impact
brother.
that it's having. I know the impact you're having on lives. That is why, in my opinion, you're probably the greatest interview I've ever had on this show to date. I mean, I'm just so honored to have you here. And
I,
as we get ready to wrap this up, if there's anything else that you'd like to say to the audience to give them encouragement, if you will, to come forth from their crisis event and learn how to share that to the world, I would love to hear you share that.
yeah, the first thing I want to say is if you're patient in your grief, if you're patient in your struggle, it really will work out. The why will reveal itself. It's always going to be positive. Please don't let the pain of today blind you from the promise of tomorrow. This life is precious. And
Yes.
when you think about suffering and you think about your hard times, please remember and find gratitude in the fact that the only reason that we suffer and go through these rough times is because we're the ones who are lucky enough to wake up every day. And the longer we live, the more we're going to see. Don't take that part for granted because there's plenty of people who would love to be where we are and they're
Yes.
not. And no
Yes.
matter what happens to you, I don't care if you're burned, I don't care if you're stabbed in the head, I don't care if you killed somebody 20 years ago. At the end
Yes.
of the day, your mental, emotional, physical scars, they cannot touch your heart, they cannot touch your soul, and they cannot touch your character if you choose to not let them.
Jesus, Jason, can I tell you something before we go off air here? I want to let you know that you impacted me today, sir. You impacted me today. You rejuvenated
Well,
something that
you
I
did the
think.
same.
Well, I want to send love to you, to your family, to
Thank you.
to all of the people that helped build you into the person that you show the world of who you are today. You're very encouraging, and I love your soul. I love your spirit, and I consider you a brother. God bless you, man.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you having me on.
You too. Thank you so much. Well, audience, there you go. This is probably the greatest interview that I've done since the day we started this. And Jason, this is what we want to show the world. And every one of these is people like us that have survived such an event, and we come out better for it. It's just amazing. And all it is a mindset and recognizing, but also recognizing all of those around us that lifted us up and took us down that journey that you and I are walking on today. I love how you gave credit to all the family and how you're
Oh,
only 2% of it. And that's true. That's
um,
exactly true. That's exactly how I live it too.
yeah.
So want to say goodbye to you, brother. Vaya con Dios. God be
Bye.
with you and your beautiful family. I
God bless
loved
you,
meeting
sir.
you. God bless you too, Jason.
Thank you, brother.
Be well. Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.